So what happens if no one party wins the necessary number of seats in the 338-seat House of Commons, the 170 seats to form a majority government? Who gets to have the first crack at forming government? The short answer is whichever leader and party can command confidence of the House of Commons, and that means finding support from other parties eventually. Let's have that conversation with three party commentators. From Toronto, I'm joined by Geoff Turner. He's a Liberal commentator, and Fred DeLorey, a Conservative commentator. And here in the studio with me is Farouk Karim, an NDP commentator. Good to see you all, gentlemen.
Hey, Peter.
Thanks for being here. Fred DeLorey, let me start with you. Andrew Scheer says he has the right to form government if he wins more seats than any other party on Monday night. But if it's a minority parliament, does it matter how many seats he wins?
Look, it comes down to convention and tradition in Canada, and the party who wins the most seats is the one who gets to form government. That's what Canadians expect. That's when they're going to the voting stations on Monday, expect the outcome to be. The party with the most seats govern. The only time that's not happened, there was a huge constitutional crisis that led to the King Byng affair. So again, the party that wins the most seats has the right to form the government.
But in convention, Geoff Turner, all the experts I've talked to have said what actually happens is whoever the sitting prime minister was when the election was called has the first right to decide what happens next, whether to step down, see if there's a path to continue governing, or ultimately could be dismissed by the Governor General. But let me ask it this way. Should Justin Trudeau try to hold on to power on Monday night if the seat count is close?
I think, listen, the Westminster system is our proud parliamentary tradition, and that system says that the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister until he or she is no longer the Prime Minister. And the thing that makes them no longer the Prime Minister is if they cannot command the confidence of the House. And so the right in our parliamentary system of a Prime Minister who is coming back to a parliament is to, if they don't command a majority, is to have the option to work with parliamentarians to return to that House with a throne speech that can pass confidence and demonstrate to the Governor General they have confidence. So this is Poli-Sci 101. It took us a while to confirm that Andrew Scheer has a degree in political science like I do, and I understand that that is the way that our system works.
All right, Frigg, let me get you to weigh in here. What Jagmeet Singh is all over this. He's the one who kind of started the conversation as the polls narrowed, saying, yeah, look, I'm open to looking at a coalition with the Liberals. I'll support the Liberals. Didn't seem to be stepped away from it for a few days, seemed to be back on it today, saying basically I'll do whatever I have to do to stop Andrew Scheer. What does that mean?
First of all, I did political science also at university.
Yeah, we've all done political science, so that's great.
Yeah, no, I think Mr. Singh, I think he is in a great position, his campaign, throughout this campaign. But for the end game, for the coalition talk, I think opening the door to, he's been clear even before the campaign started, I'm not going to prop up a conservative minority government. He said that from the beginning. So I was kind of a bit surprised that people were surprised at his answer a couple of days ago. But the point is, he's not going to support a conservative. There's another group left of other parties, and that's where he's going to go, and that's what he's telling Canadians. Those are my priorities. If you vote for the NDP, we're not going to put the Conservative in power. So that inoculates the Liberal argument of fear of having Scheer a Conservative government. But if you vote for me, our issues will be a priority. And in that group, if we can call them the progressive group, the maximum of Orange Team members in that group will make sure that we push for our priorities.
All right, Fred DeLorey, let me go back to you. I mean, our system does allow, we've touched on that, we've pointed that out. A system does allow for coalitions. We haven't seen a formal coalition at the federal level since the 1920s. You touched on it, the King Byng affair. Why would it be wrong for Justin Trudeau to continue as Prime Minister if he can secure some form of arrangement with the other parties to continue governing in a minority parliament?
Well, again, I think Canadians expect the election night results to stand, and the party who gets the most seats should get an opportunity to form that government. But on the other side of it, the thought of an NDP party supporting a Liberal government, that kind of coalition, what an unholy alliance where the Liberals are already out of control spending. Imagine the billions upon billions more that the NDP would demand to keep the Liberals afloat. It could be ruinous to our economy and to the treasury of this country.
What's your response to that, Geoff Turner?
So, Peter, I think number one, I'll put my consultant hat on. Certainly, we're all talking about a minority as if it's a foregone conclusion.
Right.
That's definitely something that we're advising clients to be prepared for. I'll put my partisan hat on now and say that a lot can happen in a few days, and Canadians are a very practical bunch as they head to the polls. And so, I think the Prime Minister actually
meaning what, Geoff? Meaning what?
Well, meaning that they can make decisions based on their local circumstances, based on their local candidates. By the way, I'll point out Liberal candidates are fantastic across this whole country. And they can determine what kind of government they want to see based on that local vote and the chances of who is in a position to carry the day in their local constituency. There are only 3 ridings of the 3 major parties that have the leader's name on the ticket. And that is not the reality for most Canadians. My point being, I think the Prime Minister had a really, really great way of describing this for Canadians is, instead of focusing on electing a progressive opposition, the NDP were not able to stop Doug Ford in Ontario. The NDP were not able to stop Stephen Harper in Ottawa. If you want to elect a progressive government, don't elect a progressive opposition.
All right, Farouk, Jagmeet Singh has kind of opened the door here by triggering this conversation and not, as I say, not backing away from it. And you saw the reaction from Conservatives, and you just heard it from Fred DeLorey saying, great, this is a coalition where we're going to all pay way more in taxes, deficits and debt for as far as the eye can see. Could this backfire?
I don't think so. I think if the Conservatives are saying that an NDP Liberal coalition is spending galore, as he said, I think a Conservative government is cutting galore. So that's why the polls are where they are. My Liberal colleague just mentioned that maybe Canadians will see during the weekend and decide what kind of government they want. I think they're already indicating what kind of government they want. They don't want a blank check to either of the 2 parties. That's being really clear in this campaign, and I don't think that trend is going to stop until the vote. And we're not used to it in our political system about this minority situation, but we'll figure it out, I think.
Well, we've had lots of minorities. We had Stephen Harper minority, we had Paul Martin minority, Stephen Harper minorities.
Sure, but they were not. It was a minority. It was like by default, people were not voting against it. They were abstaining. They were leaving that person in power. There was a certain the Martin government negotiated some budget elements with the NDP, but I think we're kind of going in a new era. Electoral reform was not made. Canadians are putting it on their own hands to make sure that the parliament is how they want it to be.
When Fred DeLorey, when Mr. Scheer says, look, if I win the most seats in a minority parliament, I get a chance to govern. How does he govern, do you think, beyond the few days he can say that he won the election? How does he? Because I think he's already said that he's not going to try and do deals with other parties. The platform is the platform. Show me his path to continued governance if he wins a minority on Monday night.
Well, look, the folks I talked to in the war room are quite confident they're going to win a significantly large minority at that. So he'll have a good backing of parliamentarians there, and I think his plan, as he introduces it to the House, it will, legislation will be piece by piece, similar to past minority governments that have worked quite well for Canadians.
Right, but so so you have one party saying I won't work with them at all. That's the NDP. Where do you see the alliances? It was kind of interesting to me today. The Bloc leader said he's not prepared to draw a line in the sand for anybody. He's prepared to work with any party if they're representing the interests of Quebec. Is that a possibility? Conservatives and the Bloc?
Well, there would certainly not be any sort of coalition or grouping with them. The last time the Bloc tried to get a no coalition was with the Liberals and the NDP. It certainly will not be the Conservatives.
But during those minority years we had in Ottawa, there were the Bloc helped support Conservative minorities.
On certain motions, again, piece by piece. That's how that government
But no formal coalition, you're saying?
Right, yeah. Absolutely no formal coalition.
Geoff Turner, what are your thoughts on whether you think the Conservatives could survive in a minority parliament? What's the platform that others could buy into?
Peter, I'll be a little bit cheeky and I'll say that I think they'd be able to survive with the NDP. And I think the reason why is if you look structurally at minorities, with the prospect of having an election, let's say next June or even next March when the government falls apart, the NDP are not capable of having an election next year. They have no money. They have millions of dollars in debt. They have mortgaged their buildings and their offices, and they're about to go to half of the caucus that they had going into this election. I find it very interesting that Jagmeet Singh is winning this election by losing half of his seats. It's a very interesting dynamic.
Are you suggesting that based on what we've the sort of categorical rejection of Andrew Scheer. We're hearing from Jagmeet's thing. You think he would walk that back?
I'm being cheeky because I would say that partnering with the Conservatives is absolutely off the agenda, but that does not preclude a handful of NDP MPs suddenly having the flu on throne speech day. It's in their self-interest to not go back to an election if there is a minority, and that's going to be an animating feature of them. So if a Conservative minority is the name of the game, I'm just going to make a prediction right now that you're going to see the NDP in some way complicit in keeping that government alive for their own pure political interests, because they are a political party and they have pure political interests, notwithstanding some of their public.
Won't surprise you to know that Farouk wants in on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, speaking of flu, I seem to remember that there was an epidemic of flu during the Harper minority and when Ignatieff was leader of the Liberal Party, and I think they went to the bathroom 68 days in a row, 68 times they had to vote to prop up Mr. Harper. So in terms of self-interest, I don't think the NDP has any lesson to take from the Liberal Party.
So, okay. Fred DeLorey, let me go back to you. So if we're in this situation on the Monday night, what's Andrew Scheer's plan is going to be to say, look, I won the most seats. Yeah, it's a minority of some kind. I want a chance to govern. How quickly does he try to put a platform before Canadians and before parliamentarians?
I think he'd want to speak from the throne as soon as possible. It would be a matter of weeks. Obviously, you got to form the government, and then a few weeks to prepare for the speech.
I guess he's promised today the job one. He would recall Parliament to get rid of the carbon tax before January 1st. So that's obviously no later than sometime in earlier mid-December.
Yeah, Parliament would come back, I'm sure, hopefully November if we can get it reconvened in time.
All right. Final thoughts from you, Geoff Turner, on what this weekend looks like then, the next couple of days. What's it going to be like? The polls tell us we're deadlocked here in a minority position. What do you think happens?
I think people think long and hard on the weekend about what they're going to do at the box, and I hope people do, because decision-making once you're behind the screen is precarious. And I think people need to put some good thought into their local races, as I mentioned before, who that candidate is and what kind of government they want to see on the end of this and how they support. And I actually believe that Canadians can really turn a little bit on a dime and we can see that deadlock break. It is possible. And besides that, campaigns on the ground are right now, today, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, building their kits, getting their get out the vote operation. Liberals are well known to be very strong on the ground, have great organization, and have a great reach into their vote. They tend to be more efficient than others. So the Liberal campaign will absolutely be completely doubled down on that ground game, pulling out their vote and making sure that the Prime Minister is on everybody's television set for the next 3 days, being a great leader that they can vote for.
Quick final word for you.
It's Mr. Singh's message for the last 4 days before the vote. Don't settle for less. Dream big. Don't give a blank check to the Liberal Party. You know what they did for the last 4 years.
All right, gentlemen, thank you all for this. We'll touch base again. Going to be a lot to talk about in the days ahead. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.